not what we expected when we talked about it last week. I don't think anyone expected that.
There's part of me that was like, just throw the Gatorade on Nick Sirianni now in the second quarter. Like, what are we doing? Right? That's what it felt like.
Well, we got another bonus episode for the No Days Off by Dad season podcast. I'm here with my co-host for this episode, 6-year NFL veteran.
You're learning.
I'm learning. Also, my brother-in-law, older brother-in-law, just turned 40, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
Evan Moore. We're going to get into the recap of this wonderful Super Bowl 59. Definitely not what we expected when we talked about it last week. I don't think anyone expected that. You have any initial thoughts going into this?
Look, there's a lot we can get into here about the game, about where each team goes from here, what it means for the future of each organization. But I got to be honest, I definitely didn't expect 10 minutes into the game my main thought on which dip I was going to dip my chip into, and that being the thing that I cared the most about. Because it honestly felt like after about 10 minutes, do the Gatorade shower. This thing's over. And I know we're talking about Mahomes and the Chiefs, and that's who I picked to win. And we've seen the Patriots, right, all-time great, come back from 28-3 or wherever it was. But, I mean, we kept saying, like, oh, you know, if the Chiefs can get a touchdown at the end of the half, it's like, well, why would they all of a sudden be able to get a touchdown at the end of the half, right? They were not capable, and we're going to get into this, but not capable of doing much of anything. So the most interesting thing to me after about 10 minutes was the dips that I was getting into at the house.
Well, honestly, that'll probably be the most interesting thing we talk about today. What was your favorite dip yesterday? Because we were together at the Super Bowl party at Doug's house. So, Doug, shout out to you. A lot of dips, a lot of great food, a lot of kids playing. But what was your favorite dip?
Well, the caramelized onion dip that my sister made, your wife.
My wife.
My wife also made a good chili, or it was cheese and meat, and it was kind of a skillet queso dip. That was pretty good, too. It's all about the dips, right? I feel like that's basically what I had for dinner was dips.
Well, then we got, like, little Wagyu sliders Doug made. That was really good.
Those were fantastic.
I think one of the most interesting things of the game was when the kids were making hot dogs. It was and I posted it on my Instagram story, but I had never seen mustard drizzled through the bun on each side of a hot dog. Like, when I do mustard on a hot dog, it's, like, right down the middle, and then ketchup's right down the middle.
Who did that, though?
Morgan.
Oh, so we're talking about it was an 8-9-year-old girl.
And honestly, like, I looked at it and I'm talking. Well, no, it's on an Eagles plate. I posted it on my story. It's probably still on my story right now because I was fascinated and I was talking to your older brother, my brother-in-law Ryan, foodie family, and we're just looking at this hot dog like, man, like there's mustard all over his bun, and Ryan just looked at me and goes, she might be a genius. And then I'm like, This is Instagram worthy right now. Right now, during this game, with what is going on, this is Instagram worthy, and this is more interesting.
It was.
But if you're an Eagles fan, you're loving every minute of it.
You love it, and that's what I was going to say. Without even having a rooting interest necessarily, and just wanting to see a good football game, the fact that it felt over so quickly with the way the game was playing out was, let's just call it like it is, a bummer, right? I mean, I get if you wanted the Eagles to win, fine. And they take care of business, and by the end of the first quarter, you feel good about them. If you took the Eagles, in Vegas, whatever you did, you feel good about it. Great. But we all want to watch a good Super Bowl. We don't want to hear Tom Brady getting into the stuff at the very bottom of his chart by the third quarter. I mean, poor Tom Brady's up there, his biggest game he's ever done as a broadcaster, and he's all of a sudden looking for stuff at the bottom to talk about. And this is more Kevin Burkhardt's job, but you got to look for stuff to talk about in the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it never felt like a game. It really didn't. 8 minutes into the game, and I'm going to tell you exactly why in a second. But.
Well, I mean, for people who don't know, like, you did 7 years of broadcasting.
Yeah.
So you know what they're doing. What specifically, like, okay, you're in Kevin and Tom's shoes, like, in this game with your sheet. Like, before the game, they're showing clips of Tom. Tom's locked in. Like, Tom is probably more nervous than if he's playing in the Super Bowl. And, there's something real. Like, this is something that he's learning. It's a new profession for him that he's learning. He's continuing to grow at. But then all of a sudden the game goes this way. And then there was a point where you and I are like, man, maybe the NFL got it. Like, this is going to be like one of those epic comebacks. Tom Brady's the one that is talking about the game.
Had that happened?
28-3 against the Falcons the year before we beat them in 18. I mean, you're thinking this could be magical, and it just never got there. So, like, what's he, like, doing?
Yeah, so before a game, briefly, but before a game, when you go into broadcast a game that there's a chance this game gets out of hand, and you prepare accordingly, right? You go, okay, like if we hit the fourth quarter and this isn't close. And by the way, I did stuff for Fox and Pac-12 Network, mostly college, and I had some bad games, right? So I was prepared for it. By the fourth quarter, like, this could be bad. Like, FBS team playing an FCS team, and you prepare accordingly. You and your broadcast partner know that, hey, if we get to the fourth quarter, let's hit some of these storylines about each team moving forward. You don't do that in the Super Bowl when it's a 1.5-point line. When you have arguably the greatest player of all time in Patrick Mahomes on one side and Andy Reid going against this Eagles team that's clearly on the rise, you don't prepare for blowouts, right? So, again, this is what Tom Brady – there's enough knowledge in that for him to dip into. So I don't think it was very difficult for him, but that's not what you prepare for. So hats off to those guys because that's not an easy thing to do late in the game where you got so many eyes and ears that are on this thing. You know what I mean?
At least Tom was wearing an epic watch, right? They kept shooting the Tom, and I was like, man, what? I mean, and I'm like, I bet I'm not the only one thinking this. This thing is bright. It's got a lot of diamonds. It's got it looks orange. So, I mean, there was threads. I mean, that's how the Super Bowl, the Eagles just pounded them so hard that everyone's just talking about Tom's watch.
They did. And on that note, so just to give people a brief recap, I picked the Chiefs to win the game. You picked the Eagles. You thought Josh Elliott would make a field goal with a little bit of time, Jake would make a field goal with just a little bit of time left and win the game. I thought that it would sort of be determined by the Chiefs' ability to get the Eagles in 3rd and 6 or more on a regular basis, throw Jalen off a little bit. I thought that was the matchup, right? Yeah. Spagnuolo against limiting Saquon, which, by the way, he generally did. But it's hard to make that argument when the Eagles were so dominant that they didn't even have to go there very much. But he generally did. He kept Saquon in check, and I thought that would be the matchup.
They did a great job for Saquon.
I missed it. I 100% missed it. You want to know why?
Everyone missed it.
Well, we both missed it, right? Because the matchup of the game was at the line of scrimmage, right? And that's what we're going to get into here. The matchup of the game that determined everything worked off of that. You have a topic tree of the game. It all worked off of the line of scrimmage. And I probably, in just having our brief discussion before the game, I overlooked the fact that the Eagles, and I knew the Chiefs' offensive line had struggled at times this year, right? Joe Tooney had been playing guard. They moved him out to tackle. They haven't really developed a left tackle. That spelled some issues for them. But when the Eagles can line up and rush 4, okay, so generally when we talk about blitzing in football, it's 5 or more that are coming after the quarterback. Usually that's all 4 defensive linemen and add either a linebacker or a secondary player coming off the edge or up the middle. That's blitzing, right? They didn't blitz. There were 42 dropbacks for the Chiefs the whole game. Drop back passing, meaning taking the snap, dropping back. 42 times the Chiefs dropped back. The Eagles didn't blitz once. Okay? Not one time. Here are the numbers. 25 quarterback pressures by the front 4, 11 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, 3 takeaways. At halftime, the Chiefs had 23 yards, 1 first down, and 0 points, and not 1 blitz. That is insane. Now, hats off to Vic Fangio, and really, it goes beyond Vic because it's really roster composition that allowed this to happen, right? I mean, Howie Roseman, hats off to him because when you come into the game as the number 1 rushing offense and the number 1 total defense in the league, I really should have looked at that and said, they're not going to get beat, right? That's football. Right, that means if you're coming in as number 1 rushing offense as the Eagles and the number 1 defense overall, you own the line of scrimmage. And you're playing against a team in the Chiefs that had struggled at times at the line of scrimmage offensively over the course of the year. So no disrespect to Vic Fangio, but they're playing quarters coverage 60% of the time, which is 2 safeties and 2 DBs, so kind of shell coverage, right? A couple linebackers in front of them.
A lot of zone.
They were zone almost the entire game. Yeah. And I think they played 2 snaps of man-to-man.
Yeah.
And you're rushing 4.
There should be completions all over the board.
Should be. Unless your front 4 can cause issues for the opposing quarterback. Yep. Because, again, normally when your quarterback's getting pressure, and you know this, normally the defense is having to sacrifice coverage in order to get that pressure.
Yep.
Right? When you're only rushing 4 and you're getting 25 quarterback pressures on 42 dropbacks, that's over 50% of the time you're pressuring the quarterback. Mahomes has no answers.
Yep.
He's like, you're speeding me up. Oh, there's nowhere to go.
And they're not rushing the ball well at all.
Still playing coverage, right?
Yeah.
Let's say for a second, let's just hypothetically say that their base play of playing quarters and rushing 4 was, let's just say that the defense was called Hawk, right? Imagine Vic Fangio up there, pops another Zen, 3rd quarter.
Big Zinner.
Pops another Zen, looks at his staff up in the box, talking to his staff talking to players on the field. All right, Vic, what's the call?
It's working.
Hawk. All right, fast forward 10 minutes. All right, Vic, what's the call? Hawk, right? I don't want to take anything away from him because he helped develop these guys. Like Zach Bond was on special teams at New Orleans, right?
Huge interception.
Jalen Carter's 23 years old and is a monster and has come a long way even since he got into the league. Cooper DeJean's a rookie, right? Quinyon Mitchell, another secondary player, a rookie. He got 2 rookies in the secondary. You've got a rookie at nickel, which is a position that requires a lot of thinking and knowing what's going on. And Cooper DeJean, who's going to be a stud in the league for a long time.
No doubt.
And so Vic, a lot of it went in beforehand. His in-game play calling, he was probably bored. He's like, guys, let's just keep doing the same thing. Just keep doing it over and over again. I mean, that's going to be just fine, right?
That's got to be fun. I mean, as a coordinator, like defensively, I mean, when all of a sudden, like especially against the Chiefs, like you feel like you're going to constantly have to find answers. Like, where's this pressure going to come from? Are we playing coverage? Are we doing this exotic thing? We playing like a corner cat,
Like Spagnuolo was having to try this at least, and it wasn't really working. But he had to do a lot more mechanics mentally.
He had to constantly think all game, how am I going to slow down this Eagles offense? Mm-hmm. And you could tell throughout the game it was stop Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. And a key point in the game that we talked about was Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has to come, and he's going to be the key to the game. He's got to execute. He's got to get the ball out. The thing that people
this was your point going into the game.
This was my point.
Jalen would respond.
It wasn't Saquon. Saquon is what an epic year. Mm-hmm. Like just such an amazing year. Hopefully he's an Eagle for the rest of his career. He fits that organization. He fits that city. So proud of him. So happy for him. But I knew it was going to come down to Jalen and how he played. And being at the NFC Championship game, week and a half, 2 weeks prior from our last episode, I watched him throw the ball in person. And I was so impressed with the way he played the game that game. It felt like he just was letting it rip. I mean, there was a 4th down, just like the other day. He throws to A.J. Brown on a go ball. Go balls are not high percentage. You played receiver and tight end. That's not a high percentage ball.
Nope.
But when you have a guy like A.J. Brown, it goes up quite a bit. And, a point of contention in this game was also officiating. So there was that call, or there's a couple calls early in the game that when we're watching the game,
thankfully
we're like,
they didn't matter.
They did not matter at all.
Yeah,
we I think everyone felt they were bad calls, but referees and officials are humans too, and they're probably amped up for the Super Bowl, so they probably see a little hand to the face, they call it. Then they make the makeup call with Dallas Goedert with the overthrown ball. They give it back to Eagles. We were thinking, man, these could be big points. They didn't matter. Mm-hmm. They didn't matter at all.
So on that note with Jalen, again, that was your point in the game, or that was your key matchup point, is that if Saquon is sort of neutralized a little bit, not many people thought that would happen, but it kind of did, right? I mean, the over-under on his longest run in Vegas was like 24.5 yards. Didn't hit it. And I thought that may happen, right?
You were right on that. You were right.
But I was, it's like, okay, make those other guys beat you, and they clearly did. The interesting thing about Jalen is this dude's resilience, right? I mean, any fan knows that back in 2018, the college football playoff, national championship, he was benched at halftime. Here comes Tua, and Tua becomes a thing. And Jalen then goes on, has one more year at Alabama, then goes on to Oklahoma, runner-up for the Heisman, second-round pick to the Eagles. I wondered when he got to the Eagles, like coming out of college, how good's the fit? Will he be a star in the NFL? All those things, right? Then fast forward to this year, and I'm, again, just speaking to his resilience overall. Fast forward to this year. Well, actually, I take that back. Let's go back to last year. He was towards the bottom of the league when it came to turnovers, right? Turned it over too much, inconsistent, right? Led people to wonder, okay, is Sirianni bringing him along the right way? Is he progressing the right way? Even though he was making some great plays. Even this year, Nick, in September, at the end of September, he had the same amount of interceptions as he did touchdowns, 4-4. His TD to INT ratio was 4-4 at the end of September. So he got through the first month of the season. You know what it was since then? If you take the rest of the regular season, not even including the playoffs, from that point on, he went 14 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yeah.
So he finished the regular season 18 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he had 4 of them in September. Now, he's not, like, as you know, the quarterback situation, like everybody contributes to that, right? He's not the only one that got better, right? They probably got better at play calling. They probably got better at putting him in positions to be successful. But for him to do that just speaks to going all the way back to when we were sort of introduced to Jalen at Alabama, speaks to his resilience. And you know how difficult that is.
It's very difficult. And I think it just shows you just being comfortable and understanding last year the way the season ended for the Eagles was rough. It was really bad. You know, losing streak, getting knocked out in the playoffs.
Something felt off.
And it's like we talked about. We talked about this game for Nick Sirianni's, what Nick's done in his, 4 seasons.
Let's just be open and honest about it. At the end of last season, there were questions about whether they should move on from Sirianni. Those were out there.
Even with the success he had.
Right.
I mean, playoffs every year, 2 Super Bowl appearance. Well, now, Super Bowl victory, but made it 2 Super Bowls. There was questions. And it goes back to, we talked about his authenticity, him being like his aggressive personality. It resonates with the team. And also, we had talked about coordinators. You got Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, who, as we're talking right now, is probably going to be announced as the New Orleans Saints head coach. He was my roommate when I trained for the Combine. Love Kellen. So proud of Kellen. But it takes time to mesh with coordinators. So the beginning of the season, I'm sure Jalen's trying to figure out Kellen's offense, trying to get comfortable. But then he realized with Saquon and the way the O-line's playing, biggest O-line in Super Bowl history, right?
6'6", 330 or 340 across the board.
And but they're also coached by Jeff Stoutland, who's arguably the best O-line coach
Fantastic.
in maybe the history of the NFL. Huge fan of him. I'm biased, but I think everyone realized he's the best. He finally realized I don't have to make these aggressive throws all the time. Like, I just have to do my part, trust my teammates. O-line's blocking, Saquon's running. So after that September, it probably registered in his mind, I just have to do my job.
Yeah.
I think the best thing when you're a quarterback and you step in the huddle, you realize it's not all on your shoulders. Everyone makes it seem that way, but you have a great team. And what the Eagles showed the world last night was they are the best team in the world. They're not the best offense, but they're the best team.
Just like you guys were in 17-18.
You feed off each other.
Yep. And
it's just such a cool brotherhood in Philly. It's such a great locker room. It's been that way for a long time. It goes top down ownership. Jeffrey Lurie, I said it in the NFC title game, best owner in sports. I love him. I love how much he loves the Eagles. I love how much he's around the facility. I love how he's at the games. I love how he's in the locker room. It means a lot to us. He really does bleed green, and he wants to provide the team with that. He lets Howie go out there and be aggressive building a team. You talked about it, and I believe this as well. And knowing Howie, he knows the importance of a great offensive line. He knows the importance of a great defensive line. Vic Fangio in 2019, I'm in the playoffs with the Philadelphia Eagles. We're playing the Chicago Bears, #1 defense in the league. They did the same thing to me. They rushed 4, and they played shell coverage.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about this. So this is the year after the Super Bowl.
Year after the Super Bowl.
Right, where you stepped in again for Carson late in the season.
Yep.
Got the wins necessary to go to the playoffs, and you go play a divisional game in Chicago.
In Chicago.
That was not the wild card. That was divisional game, right?
Wild card.
That was a wild card game. In Chicago on the road against a defense. I remember before this because I was still doing some broadcasting stuff, and I had a buddy who does a podcast. Hey, will you come on? And his first question was, hey, how does Nick navigate? Because Chicago that year had a pretty elite front four.
Unbelievable.
Khalil Mack was still there, right?
Khalil Mack was very much there.
Who was in the middle, the 3 technique or the nose?
Oh, man.
Monster. He was a problem,
yeah.
Right? And going into the game, the question for a lot of people was, hey, if they get there with 4, like we saw last night, what does Nick do? And my response to it the whole time was like, look, the difference with Nick is he's not afraid to take some of these easy throws and check it down and get these guys in trouble, right? And like wear the defensive line out, make them keep running left to right, all these things. So did you notice anything maybe that Mahomes didn't do well last night relative to how you – and again, I'm not saying this Eagles team is just like the Bears were in 19, but you get my point, is you've seen this defense and you've seen it with 4 really good rushers up front. What did anything pop out to you with regard to how Mahomes was handling it, or maybe even how Andy Reid and his staff were calling the game?
The thing that stood out to me, and Gronk had alluded to it before the game and after the game when they played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, is you have to get after Mahomes. You have to pressure the pocket. You have to be around his legs. You have to make his feet jumpy. That's any quarterback, right? That's just generic. There's nothing detailed there, but good job, Gronk. Love you. But you saw, and they talked about it, Pat's feet, he did not trust his feet. He did not trust his pocket. And as a quarterback, even if you have a clean pocket at times, you don't trust it because of how the pocket's been.
They set the tone early with it,
They set the tone early, and that's the key to mess with the quarterback's timing in his head. It also appeared, just watching the game, like I said, we had kids running around. We had weird hot dogs being made. We had dips. The game got away really quick. But it seemed like he was dropping. Like he was dropping 3 to 5, and Pat goes deep. Pat goes like 7, 8. He's one of the deeper droppers in the league that aren't even orthodox drops, but he's so good he can do it. Mm-hmm. There didn't seem many times where he'd catch the ball, get his feet, throw the ball.
In rhythm, right?
In rhythm, like ball out right now. And I think what Jalen did so well is he's at his best when he catches it, quick footwork, ball out, let his receivers win early, catch the ball, yards after the catch. That opens it up. That stops the D-line. And then eventually, later in the game, He throws which I loved. Yeah. I love that play call by Kellen Moore.
Shot to Devon.
I loved it. I mean, Tom and Kevin were saying, man, right now just play a little laid back. But if I'm Tom also, like you also had the greatest comeback in the history of the game, and the Falcons did that same thing where they sort of took their foot off the gas. Right. You don't take your foot off the gas. That's the worst mentality. Even if you're up by it's the Super Bowl, you're playing against Pat Mahomes, you're playing against Andy Reid, you're playing against the Chiefs. The game is not over till the clock hits 0. So when they called that play and took that shot, man, I loved that. And you're throwing it to like one of the best receivers in the game. You're letting Jalen Hurts just let it rip. I love that play call. That was there was a lot of daggers in the game. Everyone kept saying like, oh, the dagger was a lot earlier.
Look, it's in Fox's best interest to keep us engaged. And I think Tom Brady was afraid to admit even third quarter this thing's over, but he kept saying like this could be the dagger. It's like, Tom, the dagger might have been the second quarter. I get it. You want us to watch. Totally get it. One thing we have to acknowledge about Jalen, though, and, like, for example, when we were there in September to watch them play against the Falcons, and they lost at home, I had a really great vantage point. We were sitting up in the box with you, and I had a good vantage point of kind of from – it was kind of maybe a goal line extended look of what Jalen was looking at. And there were many times in that game I felt like he bailed out of the pocket too quick. And it didn't really work always in that game. But so I'm throwing that out there because I think that's where, if you flip on ESPN or whatever – a lot of guys have talked about that with Jalen. Like if number one's not open, hold on, don't bail. Your pocket's clean. Stay in there. He did a really good job last night of not only staying in there, and I'm not saying he hit number 2 or number 3 in his progression, but he did a really good job of finding rushing lanes and taking them when he had them, right? So I kept hitting my phone to keep this open because he was their leading rusher with 11 carries at 72 yards, right? That's 6.5 yards a carry, and a lot of those felt like 10 or 12 at a time. I thought that changed the game too.
It does.
And so he deserves a lot of credit for that because those weren't scrambles where he panicked and took off to his right. Those were, okay, guys, if you're going to play man-to-man or you're going to turn your back to me on the second level and only rush 4, I'm going to take this 12 or 13 yards. I thought he did fantastic at that over the course of the game.
Well, I think the key, too, is you talked about Pat and different things to make him comfortable. They tried to throw in some screens. We talked about that just to slow down D-line. You got to find quick completions. And I was surprised. Like, Travis Kelce is one of the best in the game at finding quick openings and getting the ball quick. And I just didn't see a lot of that. And sometimes from the TV view, you can't see everything that's going on. But what Jalen –
But that's also where I thought the secondary and linebackers for Philly, because we just focused a lot on the front 4.
Yes.
Right? Josh Sweat was fantastic. They were winning matchups all game long. Josh Sweat was great. I'm pushing Joe Thuney back into Mahomes' lap, causing the interception. But – the second and third level of the Philly defense deserve credit because oftentimes when you're getting that kind of pressure up front, Mahomes looks for his first read. It was rarely there.
Yeah, take it away.
And he didn't trust 2 and 3.
It takes more time to get to that second and third read. What Jalen did so well, and you just alluded to, was he had the rushing lane. So what quarterbacks do and what we're taught, and I'm not a runner like Jalen. Jalen is Super Bowl MVP.
You're not?
Man, with Chip Kelly.
I think it's in there. You
know what? With Chip Kelly, I got a couple hundred yards, did some zone read. I did pretty good. Thank you, Chip.
You're the kind of quarterback, the prop going into the game for the Super Bowl would be like Nick Foles over-under rushing yard 0.5. And you're like, wait, because remember, the NFL, like if you get sacked, it's negative rushing yards, right?
Yeah.
So the over-under at 0.5, you're like, you got to think about that with Nick. You're like, does he get it? Does he have some broken play where he? I'm just kidding.
And I don't think I got it in the Super Bowl. I don't even think I don't even know if I had to rush the ball. But what Jalen did so good when the read isn't open and there's O-line, Philadelphia does such a great job. When I was there, I would step in the huddle every day, just so grateful for those guys with their work ethic and how well they prepared and how well they executed. It made my life easier, and it was the reason we had success. Same reason the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts and the offense has success because of the guys up front. Jalen Hurts has rushing lanes because of the guys up front. So when his reads aren't open, he did a great job of stepping up in the pocket. The key is not to bail outside the pocket. Right. It's to keep climbing through the pocket.
Normally he likes to bail to his right.
Yes. And the defense knows that. Yeah. Spags knows that.
Oh, for sure.
He did a great job of stepping up in the pocket, finding the rushing lane, getting 10 to 15 or however many yards, getting down, and moving. That is – when you're a defensive coordinator, you could have the perfect coverage call.
It's maddening.
And then all of a sudden the quarterback does that, it pisses you off. But that's why Jalen Hurts is so special is he was really smart with the ball. He had one interception, which happens. What was so impressive with that is he just bounced back. Nothing bothered him that game. And that's the key for him being 26 years old and doing this is so impressive. He has continued to grow the culture of the Philadelphia Eagles against all odds because everyone wants to hate the Eagles, hates Nick Sirianni. I thought the Jordan commercial right after the game was epic for Jalen. I thought it was so spot on, I'm really happy for him. But he just did the things right. He did his job well. He went above and beyond with getting those rush yards. He was smart with the football, and he let the game take its course. And they ended up winning 40-22 because of that.
Let's talk about Mahomes for a second.
Yeah.
So the reason that you go into the second quarter, or even halftime for that matter, and it was frustrating if you were pulling for the Chiefs, it's frustrating because you want them to double up at the end of the half. And things are going so poorly for them that Mahomes gets out of the pocket, finds DeAndre Hopkins down the field, and had he caught this ball, they're at least in field goal range. I mean, there was plenty of room to run. And DeAndre Hopkins basically trips over his own feet.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good ball. It was kind of low and away, but he catches that ball.
The turf got him.
Yeah, trips over his own feet. But the reason we felt like Mahomes could possibly throw together some semblance of a comeback, well, I should say the only reason you would ever feel this way in that game is because Mahomes, so this is his 5th Super Bowl. So the Chiefs in the last 6 years have played in 5 Super Bowls. They've won 3 and now lost 2. He has been down by 10 points in every one of those Super Bowls. Now, they've gotten blown out now in 2 of them. Tampa blew them out. I think it was 31-9, I believe it was. And they got their butts kicked by the Eagles last night. But he's been down by 10. So being down by double digits in a Super Bowl, he's won 3 of them still. Now, this one felt different. It was hard for me to sit there and say, oh, they're fine. They'll just score before the half and they get the ball. What would lead me to believe they're about to score before the half? Now, DeAndre Hopkins catches that ball. Who knows? All of a sudden, there's all this momentum. But that, I think, is why. Now, 11.4 QBR overall in the game for Mahomes. I mean, this is all-time bad for him, right? He had a 1 quarterback rating in the first half. A 1. The number 1. And he's now been blown out twice in the Super Bowl. So as much as I wanted to think, well, he's still an all-time great, he's going to find a way, there was just no reason to think that this thing was going to change, even late first quarter.
When we were watching the game, I think everyone watching, I mean, as an Eagles fan and a former Eagles player, you're pumped. You're enjoying every single moment. But also as a football fan in the Super Bowl, I mean, even when I played, it's fun when it's you're going back and forth. Hey, they're taking a shot. You're taking a shot. It's close. You see a 2-minute drill. You see, hey, in the fourth quarter, you're exchanging blows, whatever it may be. It's great TV. It's fun to watch. So going into this, I remember when we were talking at the halftime, we're just hey, I know Andy Reid. I've played for Andy Reid, drafted by Andy Reid, played for him in Kansas City. He's awesome at halftime adjustments. The key, and this is really, I think, you're talking about the dagger in the game, is if the Eagles can stop their first possession of the second half with the halftime adjustments, it's a really, really good sign. Not only to stop them and show hey, we stopped your halftime adjustments, but with the Eagles with a 24-0 lead, they can also run the ball. And if you can run the ball effectively, the game becomes very, very short, and you have the 24-0 buffer.
It just still felt like, with all due respect to Andy Reid and halftime adjustments, when you are just getting thoroughly hammered up front by a superior defensive line, which, by the way, I've said this many times, really good, especially interior, but even exterior defensive linemen, that position becomes the second most important position on the field after the quarterback because of the way they impact the game, right? And we saw that on full display last night. So even if you've got all these halftime adjustments, what are you going to do? You going to block better? Hey, our halftime adjustment guys is, hey, Joe Tooney at left tackle, who's a good player, right? But let's try harder and block better. That's really the only thing I think you can say. You can't all of a sudden go to your screen game. By the way, the Chiefs aren't even really a screen team. You're not all of a sudden going to go to a screen game when you got guys dropping into coverage. It might wear down our defensive line a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we've established that. The Chiefs, I don't want to overreact to what this means for the Chiefs because there's no question they got their butt kicked and they need to regroup for 2025, right? I think they need to establish who their number 1 receiver is because it's been Travis Kelce for so long, even though he's a tight end. They've got DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know how much time Kelce has left. He might be done.
Yeah.
They need to figure out the offensive line. They need to develop a left tackle. They need a better right tackle. They need to get guys comfortable in their positions. And I think they need depth on the outside on defense too, both at pass rusher and corner. So that, Chiefs have to regroup. They're not done, right? Chiefs have played in 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls.
They had an amazing season, and they're a very, very good team.
But here's the interesting thing. So in our previous show, we spent so much time talking about the Chiefs possibly three-peating and doing something no one's ever done before, and this is one of the best dynasties we've ever seen. What happened last night turned that completely on its head. Chiefs aren't done, right? They're going to find answers. They're going to be there again. But what the Eagles did and what they put on full display, if we think about what the Eagles have moving forward, Jalen Hurts is 26. Saquon's 28. Zach Bond's 28. Jalen Carter's 23. Jordan Mailata's 27. These are key players, right? The biggest piece of the pie for their cap hit next year is Jalen Hurts at like $21 million. They are in prime position. Now, those things were facts before the game.
Yes.
Right? So some of you might be like, well, duh. Yeah, I get it. Those things were facts before the game. When you go out and do what you did to the Chiefs last night, all of a sudden everybody looks at it and goes, oh my goodness, right? You look on paper, you're like, are we looking like, this is my question for you. Chiefs moving forward, Eagles moving forward, possible dynasty. You lose Kellen Moore. I think you're going to keep Vic Fangio. Most likely lose Kellen Moore. Yeah. Obviously, everyone would love to see him stay. It looks like he's probably going to go to become the head coach of the Saints. But when all that stuff I just said, age, like star players, great organization, arguably the best organization in sports right now. What's the future look like for the Eagles? Are we looking at a dynasty that's brewing right now for Philly?
I think the biggest question, I think those are all good facts. I think the biggest question mark and the biggest struggle will be finding an offensive coordinator to replace Kellen Moore. Everyone thinks it's as easy as plug and place.
You interested?
Am I interested in being I would not be equipped for that. I would love to coach someday.
Look, man, you're like a savant when it comes to, and I know you watch film and do all that stuff, but like just quickly looking at plays and thinking of what your answer would be. Nick Sirianni might tune into this. I mean, you interested? You want to move the family? Or maybe you could do it with technology these days. You could probably do it by Zoom.
Hey, with AI, Zoom.
I will say this: superimpose Nick on the sideline calling plays. Or
I do have 2 years of youth girls flag football coaching under my belt, and we've shown a lot of progression. I actually, because we're on show and I got you, I'm recruiting your daughter Chandler. I desperately want her on the team, at least for this spring season, because now you play flag football all year round. It's crazy.
The offense is going to be a little more complicated though, because, and again, no disrespect to Vic. I'm a Stanford alum. Vic came to Stanford when Harbaugh was there and helped turn things around. He's a fantastic coordinator, but I could have called plays for the Eagles last night defensively. I'm telling you, he was just sitting there like, same play. You're playing Madden, just keep hitting A all game long.
But the thing that won't be noticed is this: the position coaches and the quality of coaching of all the players dialed in and doing what, like even Cooper DeJean on that interception, the pick six. He's rolling with Pat. A rookie probably just keeps rolling to the right, but he's so well coached. He's naturally talented.
This is fair.
He jumps back. So, yes, I agree with you. The play calling was very simple, but the difference – a lot of guys in the NFL, offense, defense, run the same stuff. It's the quality of position coaches and what they're doing in the meeting rooms and how they're teaching their players and the drills they're doing at practice and how hard they practice and how well they recover. Doug Peterson used to say everything matters, and he's right. Everything matters. You have to do it at a high level. I've been on teams where we didn't have great position coaches. They just sort of went through the motion, said, hey, we're running cover 4. Or like on offense, hey, we're running this route. They didn't teach the specific route versus all the coverages and what we wanted to do and then give freedom to the players. They just said, hey, you're running a 5-yard stick route, run out versus man, sit versus zone. That doesn't get the job done. What gets the job done is at practice, that coach lining up in front of you, showing you every look, and you run against every look over and over again. And that's the difference of the Eagles is they have amazing coaches. The different in the Super Bowl when we won in 2018, Super Bowl 52, we had amazing coaches. They have amazing coaches here. So the biggest hole they fill will be the quality of coaches on offense because Kellen will leave. He deserves that. He's shown that. The Eagles aren't the only place he's had success. He's had success over and over again. He's
success in Dallas, right? He's just a victim of a bad organization. And
the thing that's awesome about Kellen is he was a quarterback. And I'm not just saying this. Like I do think quarterbacks they make great coaches because they've been in the huddle. They can relate to the players, and also they can relate to the quarterbacks when they make a mistake.
Yeah.
When you have a coach that hasn't played quarterback and you make a mistake, they usually freak out on you because they just don't understand. They're just used to like analyzing film in front of you. Like you should have done this. It's like you haven't been in the game. But like I remember with Frank Reich coming to the sideline after throwing an interception, he would say, "Hey, you look great. Your feet look great. You look calm, cool, composed. Keep going, man." And I didn't expect, but he played the position. Doug Peterson played the position. Kellen Moore played the position. They know how to handle it. That's why they're so great. That will be the biggest spot they fill. But if they fill it well and they learn from hiring within, it doesn't always work out that way because Kellen Moore's been the one calling the plays. So you got to go out there and find the one that fits Jalen Hurts. Who will work with Jalen Hurts the best and who will run this offense because they found out what works. So they just need to keep building on that. That'll be the key in the offseason. But they have a little time there. They need to enjoy the Super Bowl and have some fun.
It's a challenge of every good team, right? The Detroit Lions lost both coordinators.
That's going to be very difficult.
Year. Had they been healthy, had Aiden Hutchinson been healthy and all these guys been healthy, maybe they make a run, right? But now Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are gone.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are going to deal with this a little bit as well. I don't think they're going to lose Vic Fangio, but they're losing Kellen Moore most likely. So that's your answer, is that depending on how they can fill that void with a guy that meshes with what they're doing, because they're a unique offense, right? This is not like your traditional pocket passer or good running back. Like, you got to be creative to take advantage of all of Jalen's talents. So finding the right guy is going to be key. But do you agree, based off the age of all these star players, based off of Howie Roseman's track record, based off the way the organization identifies and develops talent, that we're possibly looking at the Eagles being a regular at not only deep playoff runs, but possibly Super Bowl champions over the next 5 years? It could be. I mean, look, the league's built for parity, and other teams are going to step up. But this is scary when you look at it on paper.
The key to any great team is a great foundation from top down.
Yeah.
Eagles have that. So, therefore, they are built to continue to go into the playoffs and do basically what the Chiefs have been doing. The Chiefs, on the other hand, in the AFC, they just gave the blueprint how to beat them. It was shown in the Super Bowl versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
They're a great team. They had an amazing season. We're not taking anything away from them, but they were exposed in this game of how to beat them. So if you're the Bills and you're the Ravens, which are already great teams and very close to beating them and overtaking them, you see how to do it. Mm-hmm. You just have to find the right players and the right schemes to do it and execute it at a high level.
Yeah, it's a great case study, because to dominate a football game, you really, I mean, there are exceptions from time to time, big plays and all that, but generally speaking, to do it over the long haul, it's domination up front. And so when you hear about signings of receivers and, Tyreek Hill goes to Miami, you're like, cool, right? The Chiefs still won Super Bowls when he left, right? The reality is those guys, those types of players are replaceable, because what's most important is what happens up front. And the Eagles put that on full display last night.
They did.
Which was, it really is football 101, and it's football at its finest. It's a beautiful thing. Even though the game was frustrating because it was such a blowout and I wanted something closer, watching a defensive line dismantle an entire offense, an entire plan. You hear good defensive linemen often referred to as game wreckers, right? You have all these plans and everything, but bottom line is, if Tooney can't block Josh Sweat or they can't block Jalen Carter, none of it matters.
Pat can't do it.
None of it matters, especially when those two are getting there and you've got 7 in coverage. Pat's like, I've got nowhere to throw the ball.
And honestly,
because when you're getting pressure, blitzing, like I mentioned earlier in the show, 5 guys coming, every offense has built-in answers to pressure, because there's always going to be some vulnerability when there's blitzing.
But if they're playing coverage,
they didn't blitz.
There's not a lot of answers.
There's no answers. I mean, poor Pat's going over to the sideline being like, and he didn't finger point. Like, after the game, I got to give Pat credit. He said, this game, you know what he said? This game exposed things that I don't do well, and I've got to get better.
I love that.
Okay, that is awesome.
That's why he's going to be the greatest, or one of the greatest of all time.
Right?
I'm a huge Pat Mahomes fan.
Yeah.
I played for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. They had an amazing season. The Eagles got the better end of them, but you said it. They'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back.
They lost in the Super Bowl.
I'll be back.
It was a bad game in the Super Bowl, but let's remember, the context is everything. They did a great in the playoffs. They had a tough road to the Super Bowl. They had a chance at a three-peat, which has never been done, and they got blown out. But these guys, they have a great foundation from owner to GM to head coach to quarterback to position coaches. They have it as well, so they'll be back. I'm just happy that the Eagles – and I was sort of right. I know I said it was going to be less than 3 points in a game, but if I'm looking at the sheet, Jake Elliott 50-yard field goal was like the last points the Eagles scored. So
you're digging now.
Yeah, I'm digging. I'm like, hey, I picked the Eagles to win. I don't think anyone saw this, but we did talk before the game. I thought it would be an amazing Super Bowl. But what I said, the reason of that, I thought it'd be a closer game because I thought that the Chiefs could potentially blow the Eagles out, and the Eagles had the ability to blow the Chiefs out.
You told me that before the game. Yeah.
And I was like, that's why it's so interesting. I don't think that, the Eagles were, and I'm very happy that happened. Yeah. Whereas when it was the 49ers versus the Chiefs, you're just like, are the 49ers going to be able to stay in this game? Mm-hmm. And then they end up
losing. Could go either way.
It was different. This was a very different Super Bowl. Chiefs ended up playing their worst game. A lot of it because of the execution of the Eagles, and then they just couldn't find answers. Yeah. But that being said, I mean, the Eagles are going in this offseason like this. The Chiefs, it's a good thing for the Chiefs because going into a three-peat, a lot of things get covered up. A lot of things get covered up with winning. Now everything's exposed, and the type of people they have there, they will look at everything diligently and get better. Yeah. I love that Pat Mahomes said that. That shows the type of leader he is. That shows the type of character he has. Pat's going to be back in the Super Bowl again. He's been in so many. And honestly, Tom Brady is probably happy too. I mean, he doesn't want to be,
Tom had a 10 years 10-year gap of not winning a Super Bowl.
Well,
over the course
out
of
of every player in the NFL right now, the only one that could surpass him right now is Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
With how many Super Bowl wins he has at a young age and the type of coaches he have and the type of foundation.
Yeah. And we mentioned what we think the Chiefs have to do to regroup this offseason and get themselves ready for next year earlier in the show, which I think is really important. Now, quickly before we get to some of the questions that we want to take from our listeners, I think it's important to kind of end this segment with just a hat tip to Sirianni because, again, you go back to last year, the way they finished the season, there were some questions about whether he was the right guy. Both Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore, it's their first year with the Eagles, right? You go get 2 new coordinators. It clearly worked. Now, personnel matters, right? You go grab Saquon Barkley, and Kellen Moore's like, man, that's great. I'd love to have that guy. Personnel changed as well. But you go get 2 new coordinators, and you do what he did this year. I mean, that defense last year wasn't great, right? And they've got 2 rookies on the back end, and they've got some new faces, right? They made some decisions personnel-wise. So for him to do that, choose the right guys, kind of an organizational decision, but still, I mean, that's on the head coach. Choose the right guys. It all comes together the way it did. You know, I asked you last show, like, does he have something to prove in this game? Well, if he did, guess what? I mean, he answered that with a massive, 15 exclamation points. Any more questions, anybody? By far the best team in football this year.
But the thing about the NFL, and this is the thing that I love about it, is they can enjoy this for this offseason. They'll be back to work soon. They'll all take their vacations. They'll get their Super Bowl rings after OTAs, offseason training. They'll celebrate that. The thing about the NFL is this. He has to prove it again next year. You can't go out next year. But that's what I love about the NFL. You cannot be complacent. That's what Andy Reid's done such a great job of throughout his career. It's just constantly having great teams. Nick Sirianni now is on that path. Legend in Philadelphia, legend in the NFL for the rest of his life with what he did. But as a head coach and the changes he will have to make because he'll lose. Anytime you have success, you're going to lose coaches. That's part of the game. You're going to lose players to free agency. You don't realize that when you're celebrating the Super Bowl. That's the last time that team, those coaches will ever be together because you're going to come back to offseason training and a lot of guys are going to sign big free agent deals because they won a Super Bowl and they did their job, and that's awesome for their families. That's awesome for their futures. You're going to have to now mold a new team. That is what he will have to continue to do. I mean, Doug Peterson's no longer the coach.
Yeah, which, by the way, I mean, he's heading into the final year of his contract.
Yeah.
We can't ignore that. Zach Bond, free agent.
Yeah.
Mekhi Becton, fantastic signing. Has become a hell of a player there in New York. It was kind of like, is he a bust? Is he not? Compared to what people thought of him coming in. But here's Sirianni with all those things heading into the final year of his contract and doing what he just did. He's clearly the guy. Right?
Oh, he's got
to keep proving it. But
yeah, he's the guy for the future.
The NFC is going to be interesting, right? The Commanders have a young star at quarterback, and obviously Detroit's going to be back too, depending on who they hire and finalize their staff and whatnot. But
the NFC East, it's going to be the Commanders for a while.
Yeah.
I don't see the Cowboys doing anything special.
Well, the NFC in general, you got to deal with the Lions.
I'm just saying, just beat win the NFC East first. All right, what's the challenge? I mean, all right, you got the Cowboys. I mean, I don't know there. You got the Giants. I don't know there, but the Commanders,
they're gonna be tough.
Dan Quinn's
a good coach. Jaden Daniels is
got a
superstar. Right?
They're gonna be the one to beat in the NFC East. They're gonna be a contender.
But no one's more complete than this Eagles team. I think they'll be able to re-sign those guys that are pending free agents. They'll obviously get their coach locked up, and like I said, it's a fair question to ask. Are we heading into, after 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years, won one of them, lost one of them, and won one of them the way they did last night? It's fair to ask if we're heading into an era of Eagles dominance. I think that's totally a fair question.
And I would love that.
Yeah,
I would love that.
You would.
What I would say from my experience is, and I'm not saying we did this, but this offseason when you get back to work, forget about the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Get back to work. It's 0-0. The season starts. You're rebuilding. Have that same hunger that you had the year before when you lost the Super Bowl. Take that. But have the confidence of winning the Super Bowl. It's a weird dichotomy of living in both worlds. You got to have the confidence that you won the Super Bowl, but the hunger that you lost it a couple years ago, and you got to find that, and you got to build all that. You can't just – because everyone's coming for you
Everyone's
now.
coming for you.
Every single game you play, they're going to be guns a-blazing. I mean, I saw it when we went to the 18 season. We did not have a good year. When I took over, we had a 3% chance of making the playoffs. We rounded off 3 wins at the end of the season. We barely made the playoffs because Minnesota Vikings lost. And then we go beat the Bears on the road, and we almost make it.
This is the year after the Super
Bowl. We almost make it back to the NFC Championship game. We lose at the end versus the Saints. But we weren't as good. We had changes at coordinator. We had all those things. So my advice to the Eagles is enjoy the Super Bowl. Have so much fun. You deserve it. And all the guys are going to be doing commercials on vacation. When you come back to work, be hungry because now you have a chance to defend your title and own that.
Yep.
I do think what was fun about yesterday is I'm learning social media. I'm getting better. I had a couple tweets that were pretty good. I know we'll talk about that. We also wanted to engage our followers and listeners to ask questions. So we're going to get in all that to wrap up the show. So we got our boy, also co-host John on the tools. What question did some of the listeners have?
Okay, so you just mentioned it. We did post yesterday after the game on our Instagram, No Days Off Dad season. Make sure you're following that for a chance to be a part of the show. Your Twitter game was on fire, Nick, so I think we should address just 2 of your tweets. This one caught a little fire, 4.7 million views.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
You know what would have made it better if he tagged Tom Brady?
Oof. Next time?
So Tom probably saw it, though.
Oh, Tom saw it. So the context is everything, right? So Tom and I, the week before, Tom is also part owner of Noble. They bought the TB12 brand.
No Bull.
No Bull.
Yeah.
No Bull.
Noble.
No, it's No Bull. There's No Bull, right? So we did sort of a collaboration where we did a fun little commercial. It honestly would have been one of the top Super Bowl commercials if we put it on TV. I thought it was great. Just sort of having fun. I got to wear my dad's season gear, so I consider it a little bit of a collaboration. But what's funny is one of his lines is he's talking to my, nephew on the commercial, and he's going through his stats of the Super Bowl he lost to us, and he's saying, you could throw for 500 yards, do this, that, and the other. Just ask your uncle about luck. So it was great. It was a great line. We had a fun back and forth. So I'm in full dad mode last night. I mean, I left in the fourth quarter because Bodie was now scootering around a pool, and we were a little like, let's get home. We got to get out of here. The game is over. I'll celebrate when we get home. But the kids are upstairs. I'm cleaning up downstairs. A lot of dips, so cleaning up the dip trays is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And I'm just cleaning out one of the dip trays, and I'm like, man, the tweet just came to me. And I had already been tweeting throughout the game and having fun, working on my Twitter game. I'm like, this is really funny. It was in light. I was thinking about the Noble commercial. I was thinking about Tom Brady. And I was thinking the last 2 Super Bowls the Eagles won, he was there. And let me just say this, and then let me tell everyone have a great night. But it goes along. If everyone goes back and watch the Noble commercial we did and then sees this, that's context. I love Tom. We had a lot of fun with this. I'm sure he saw it. The fans loved it. But this is all – he's the GOAT. And it's all in fun. It's not a aggressive thing. But
it is.
It's a little bit, but I had fun doing it. And
don't qualify.
Hey, honestly, Noble was probably happy about it.
It was good.
And then
it was good timing.
Great. The key is great things happen when you're cleaning the dishes.
Yeah. So this one was also. I mean, go ahead, John.
Yeah, this one was awesome.
Evan was impressed by this one.
This one was good.
So he didn't even know I was doing this because I was taking notes. My Samsung phone has a little S Pen thing, so I'm taking notes on it. I know
he's the guy that makes the texting thread green.
And
it drives everybody insane.
Shout out Samsung.
And now he's like, oh, it's not SMS anymore; it's RCF.
RCS. I know it's not end-to-end encrypted. All that stuff. Hopefully, we're working on that.
I don't care about that. It's still just a pain.
Oh man, it's awesome. But the thing about it is, I love green. I love the color green.
So now that's why you do.
So I make everyone
justify anything.
So green thread. Samsung, thank you, S25 Ultra. I got my tab right here.
All right, so Cooper DeJean picks off Pat Mahomes. And keep in mind,
great play.
Incredible rookie. Hasn't even generated a turnover yet this year. Gets his first interception of the season and a pick 6 on his birthday, Cooper DeJean.
I didn't even know it was his birthday.
It was his birthday yesterday.
Wow. Happy birthday, Cooper.
Not only do you get your first interception, it's a pick 6, it's your birthday, and it's in the Super Bowl. Right? I mean, it's getting cool. I mean, the guy's an Iowa icon as it is. Now he's in Philly.
Great basketball player too, right?
Oh, yeah. He's a total stud. And now he's a Philly icon. He pulls this off, and then Nick pulls this. Because we thought this was the last score of the first half. We thought.
It was. There was more time on the clock, but if you see pick 6, that was special. Always good to finish the second quarter with something special.
That was special.
And then before I know it, there's a collaboration from the NFL, and I went to you. I was like, "Is this actually the NFL's page?" Because I didn't expect this. So they have this graphic, and then Evan couldn't believe that I was creative like that. But with building dad season, you have to be creative. So it just came to me. Great things happen when you're eating great dips.
Yeah, and bored watching a blowout.
I'm not gonna lie.
His mind had time to wander.
That'll actually lead us into the first fan question. So again, follow us on Instagram at nodaysoff.dadseason. This one came from Julian Ruther. So big leads can be vulnerable. Just ask the Falcons. When did you both feel 100% that the Eagles had won?
I would say when it was 24-0 right before the half, because that was scored at halftime, right? 24-0.
24-0.
And the reason is because, and again, every game's different, and there's some parallels too between games, but just noticing over the course of the first half that it's not the Eagles weren't doing anything special defensively other than just winning at the point of attack. Like schematically, there was nothing that was like an exception. So there was nothing to me that would think like, okay, all of a sudden the Chiefs are going to be able to solve this problem. They're dropping into coverage and rushing for the most part, and they're getting dominated. There's no answers to that, right? So unless you're going to go find, and again, these guys are pros. Like Chiefs offensive line, like we can say they struggled, but there's a lot of really good individual players on that offensive line, but they were struggling. And so unless you're going to go find a new unit that's all of a sudden going to play at a new level, this game is not changing. And so there's part of me that was like, just throw the Gatorade on Nick Sirianni now in the second quarter. Like, what are we doing? Right? That's what it felt like. We kept saying, "Oh man, they'll score." No, it's not happening.
I think all the people watching the game just wanted to see a little life from the Chiefs just to make it more interesting of a game.
We're hopeful,
but obviously, I'm just hoping the Eagles just put it away. And once again, if you're an Eagles fan on Broad Street, you're loving every minute of it. For me, just playing for Andy and just knowing his halftime adjustments, it was the first series of the second half when they stopped him. That's when, for me, it was over.
Well, when they came out in the second half, you noticed, you made the comment that, okay, it looks like they're trying to run the ball a little bit to take some pressure off of Pat Mahomes. This is the Chiefs, like their play calling. Well, over the course of the game, the running backs combined for 7 carries for 24 yards. Now, part of that is because they were losing, so you're not just going to hand it off a bunch when you're losing. But it just also is representative of the fact that the Chiefs they were disjointed offensively the entire game. Again, because the 4-man rush. But they had no answers, and so they couldn't ever get to their run game and build a rhythm in play calling. This is a little bit of a Matt Nagy, like this is a mitigating factor for him. What's he supposed to do? Yeah. Start building a balanced game plan at halftime when you're down 24-0? Like, not going to happen.
I mean,
right?
The key, and I was talking to you about it, and I was trying to see from the TV copy is hard because they kept cutting from the huddle, away to the huddle, to guys on the sidelines. So I know the terms of the Chiefs, playing for the Chiefs and Andy. The key, the offense in that time, and they might not have done it right away, but when you're down 24-0 is an offensive term called save mode. It switches your gears of offense. Save mode is basically running your offense from a no huddle situation because you don't have enough time.
So it's not quite 2-minute mode.
It's not 2-minute. You're a slower pace, but it's save mode, like high intensity. You're going to run the offense. We got to get on the ball. We have to put pressure on the defense. And it works a lot of times because the defense doesn't get the perfect call, but as we talked about it, Vic was just calling the same play, and they were executing the same play at the same level, high level.
Vic's like, "Oh, let me get another Zen." And then was like, "No, Vic, you need to make a play call." He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Here, just put it on repeat. Put the 4-man rush and cover 4. Just put that on repeat." I'm in the middle of something right now, guys.
How many over/under on Zins that he had during the game?
Well, he probably thought for focus purposes. Again, that's another conversation.
Yeah, like that'll be a different episode.
If maybe Zen, a lot of people like nicotine helps them focus. Fine. He probably thought going in, hey, get me like 3 10s, right? I could be ready to go, focus all game. Then he got to the second quarter, he's like, I'm done. I don't even need it. I'm good.
He honestly
don't even need it.
He might have taken melatonin just so he can get to sleep and get a good night.
So he shifted to from late second quarter. He shifted to like, man, I'm here all night. To now I want to start getting ready to be able to fall asleep on time.
Yeah,
right.
I want to get. I mean, I'm sure he was out partying and having a great time.
Yeah. They're like, "You want some coffee at halftime?" He's like, "No. I am good. I want to be able to fall asleep because this game."
Yeah, I mean, we got to introduce him to some like Lucy breakers too. Those are pretty good.
Those are good ones too.
Those are pretty solid.
Yeah.
I mean, enhances the focus.
If you're a Zen guy, like
I know, Zen hits you quick. Zen hits you quick. I like Lucy because it has great flavor and it's just sort of stable.
They're cheating.
Both of them are cheating, but it does enhance your mental.
Like, why does a Zen 3 hit like a Lucy 4?
I don't know.
Now we're off the rails.
Should we rein it in?
That'll be another episode. Let's get another one up here.
Well, Julian Ruther, you got a lot there for your question, so thanks for that. Brandon C. Bafe asks, please talk about Sirianni's quote, "You can't be great without the greatness of others," and what that quote means to each of you.
I think that encompasses what he's built as a team. Mm-hmm. The greatest thing about football is it's the greatest team sport in the world because everyone has to execute every play. And the reason I say that is this. You go to basketball. You're a big basketball player. I love basketball, play basketball. You can have 2 or 3 guys mess up on a play and one guy takes it to the rim and scores a dunk or shoots a 3 or whatever. You can cover up mistakes. Football, you can't really cover up mistakes. If one person messes up, jumps off sides, all those things, messes everything up. Everyone has to be good. Everyone has to be dialed in. So he knows the Eagles are built on team. They're built on brotherhood. They're built on the family that every team talks about, but they've really built that culture from top down. So to me, that's what it encompasses, and that's what Nick is teaching them, and all the coaches and players have bought into it.
I think he meant a lot of things when he's saying that. Obviously, Nick hit on it generally. I'll be a little bit more specific about his coordinators. So I played my final year of college football at Stanford. I played for Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh is a really good football coach, right? He's good at instilling culture in a team, in a locker room, kind of a tough mindset. But I think the thing that Jim is best at is hiring a staff.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it doesn't take away from what he's capable of or what Nick Sirianni is capable of. But Jim, over my time, I mean, at Stanford, hired Vic Fangio. Mike Bloomgren, who became the Rice head coach, was the biggest reason Stanford kind of changed their identity as like a run-first team. I think what Nick is saying here is I made some changes this offseason. I got with Howie. We got some new players, and we got 2 new coordinators, right? And those guys are great. And like it's a way of kind of shedding some of the light that comes on him being humble, and pointing to the fact, because he gets credit for he hired those guys, right? Those guys can be incredible, but he's the one that hired them, so he deserves credit for it. He went out and got Kellen Moore. He went out and got Vic Fangio, and those are home runs at each of their respective positions. So I think what he's saying is, hey, at the coordinator position, in addition to personnel stuff too, and as a team, but at the coordinator position, we were great. I don't deserve credit for all this. These guys were fantastic. To which I would say, you went out and hired those guys, right? You realize, hey, Vic's a good fit for our personnel. What Vic does defensively, because Vic's always kind of been similar schematically to what we saw last night. And then Kellen Moore, to go out and get him and plug him in and make it all work. For it to all work that quickly in 1 year, there's greatness of others going on there, and I think that's what Nick is talking about.
You know, what came to my mind when you were talking is how cool was it to have like Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, and other Philadelphia Eagles players glorify God after the game. I mean, you and I are both believers in Jesus Christ and Christians. That was, you know, first thing he says before, you know, when he gets the mic from him is all glory to God. And I think, you know, that was really cool to see those guys sharing light, saying that it's more than a game. Our life is more than this game, and they got to shed light on that. I thought that was really cool that they did that.
You know, Nick, I feel like we're seeing that more and more, and not just, I want to thank God for putting me here, and then I want to thank my teammates. It's not this like sort of perfunctory, like, hey, let me just check that box. Even Jaden Daniels, after a couple of his games this year, I mean, it's like this super authentic, real sort of narrative these guys are throwing out there about why they feel like they are where they are. And it's more, I don't know if there's a movement sort of, I feel, with some of these star players, and not just thanking God, but being super authentic and genuine about it, and giving us a little more insight as to why they feel that way. No, so I'm glad you brought that up.
No, I think you just see like it, and it's not like they're on a mountaintop moment. I remember when I was going on stage, Stefan Wisniewski came up to me. He's like, dude, how cool is this? We get to glorify God after winning the Super Bowl and give the credit to him and just our brotherhood. And then seeing this Eagles team do the same thing. And it's through the trials, through the tribulations of life where, you know, our faith, Christ is walking alongside us. It's not, you know, they had this mountaintop experience, but in this mountaintop experience of win the Super Bowl, they realized the importance of life, and life is more than a game. And for them, they get to share that moment. And I thought that was really special. That they got to do that. Sports Spectrum is a great resource where they did a lot of clips of all the players and the coaches throughout the Super Bowl week that shared their faith. I followed Sports Spectrum, done stuff with them. So if anyone listening wants a great resource, Sports Spectrum is a great resource for that.
I just to cap that, I feel like it's a sign of humility too, because as much of a stud as Jalen Hurts is, and what we saw, look at the way he's built, and the tools he has physically, these guys, like, they know how delicate this all is, right? And how hard it is, right? And they can't help but at the end of a game and say, look, this is bigger than me.
Yeah,
like,
he's merely a human.
These guys are like nervous wrecks the whole season, right? Because they know how easy it is to screw up, fall on their face. Things start to go south quick before you know it, your career's over, right? That's how this works. Everyone's super talented. So it's sort of an admission of humility, which I always appreciate with guys like that.
Great. Beautiful. So, you know, we got to give a shout out to Beaver Force just because they have a great Twitter handle, Beaver Force. And you answered this question, but I just
Beaver Force?
Beaver Force, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe they're from Oregon State.
Maybe.
But with Kellen Moore taking the head coach job in New Orleans, if he does, would you ever consider being the OC of the Eagles? You did answer this, but just got to give Beaver Force a little love.
Yeah, Beaver Force. Right now, with my 2 years of coaching experience in youth girls sports, I am not equipped for that job.
Are you built, like with your you've been in a lot of systems, right? And because are you built to build a system around Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley?
Right now,
it'd be different than what you're used to. You
know what I mean? if I ever went down that route, which that would be a long conversation with your sister, which I would, I'm really happy. I love coaching youth sports. I'm about to coach my son's T-ball team, which is, I just had my first meeting yesterday.
That'll be tough for them being the Chiefs OC.
Oh man, it's going to be tough. It is going to be tough, but it's going to be so much fun. And I told Tori, I want to be there for Duke because I know I can get the best out of Duke and I don't want anyone else to deal with his tantrums. I want it to be me. And I just think it's important. But that being said, if I ever did go that route, it would only be right to start at the bottom with quality control and learn the ropes and go through the grind. That those quality control coaches are the heroes behind the coaching staff because they're doing all the grunt work. They're cutting up all the cut-ups. They're building the playbook. They're having to change the playbook over and over before meetings. Like, it's insane. So if I ever went that route, I would want to learn the system, learn the grunt, learn how these coaches do. Coaches don't get enough credit. They really don't. They're at the facility all the time, sometimes even sleep there.
And this is why it generally pisses off the coaching population when guys just come off the field and go, I'll just be an offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
excuse me? I've been working for 20 years to figure this thing out.
I would want to earn my way, even if it was I'm not saying I want to be a quality control for 5 years. 1 year would probably be pretty good. And
you
then
still want to be on the fast track.
I wouldn't mind them being like an assistant quarterback coach.
Yeah.
I would love that aspect. I don't know if it's in the cards for me, but I also know that God has a way of doing things in your life that you don't expect. But right now, the only thing I'll be coaching is my kids and other kids in youth sports, and I thoroughly enjoy providing that love of the game and the fundamental skills that come with it, and then also teaching them how to win and how to lose.
Yeah. So a quick shout out to Jalen's greatness, because if he were the Eagles offensive coordinator, that's who you'd be coaching. I am almost certain of this fact. It might not be a fact if I'm not certain, but I'm almost certain this is true. Jalen Hurts has not had the same offensive coordinator for 2 years in a row since high school. Okay, so that's insane.
We'll have to AI fact check that.
It also speaks to his greatness, right? So in college, there were a lot of changes. Since he got to the NFL, there's been a lot of changes. He had Kellen, had a great year with Kellen Moore. Kellen's probably on his way out, most likely to go coach the Saints. I mean, that's incredible that Jalen Hurts is doing what he's doing, and he really hasn't had the continuity that most people enjoy.
I mean, kudos to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman for drafting Jalen. Potentially a controversial move at the time, going to the second round with Carson there.
It seemed weird at the time.
It was weird, but at the same, for me, it wasn't. And it wasn't in a disbelief. Like Carson's great quarterback. I had all that, but I also knew I'm not even sure of this, but in my draft class, before they drafted me, they really liked Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. They loved Russell Wilson, who Jalen Hurts watched Russell Wilson growing up, emulated his game a little bit around Russell. Different players, but there is some similarities, I would say. They saw Jalen as like another Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's had a Hall of Fame amazing career, still going. Shout out to the 2012 draft class. But when they saw Jalen, they saw another Russell type, and they took a chance on him, and they were right. Mm. And Jalen might even have a greater career than Russell had. It's possible. Yeah. But it just shows you the type of drafter, how he is. And then Mr. Lurie's aggressive as well. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing about Philadelphia. This isn't a lower franchise winning a Super Bowl and being happy, going 8-8, or now it's 8-9 next year. Like, they're gonna go for it again, and they want to be in the playoffs. Philadelphia wants that. The city wants that. And that's what's great is I remember and this is nothing against the Rams, but like when the Rams had their Super Bowl parade, it wasn't anything crazy. Mm-hmm. When we had our Super Bowl parade, it was insane. I'd imagine this Super Bowl parade will be even crazier than the one we had, just because now it's their second and everyone knows how much fun it was. So this parade on Broad Street is going to be epic. Mm-hmm. And I know all the Eagles fans, it's much deserved for the Eagles players and Eagles organization and for the fan base. So have a lot of fun, but make sure you're safe.
So to recap, he's off the market for the Eagles OC job. Just so Nick Sirianni.
I'm coaching T-ball. We just finished the basketball season. Yeah. And flag football is coming up. We are doing a spring league. So once again, hey, if any of you are listening, I want comments. I want his daughter Chandler already is an amazing athlete, but we're going to be watching her for a lot of years to come. Probably in pro sports.
By the way, she's 7.
She's 7, but
whatever.
I'll tell you what. The way she throws a football, the way she catches a football, the way she shoots a basketball, the way she plays soccer. Thank goodness Colby is your wife. It's not you. It's Colby.
It's Colby.
You have some, but Colby. So we'll thank Colby for that. But just putting pressure on I'll take her to practice. I'll even drop her back off at your house.
He wants her to play flag.
She can play whatever position she wants to play.
NIL. 3 letters.
Am I allowed to pay her?
NIL.
I will buy her dinner after every practice.
It's going to take a trust account or something like that.
We can make that happen. We'll get a podcast sponsor to sponsor Chandler playing flag football.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, you heard it, No Days Off community. Let's get Chandler on Nick's squad, right?
Yes.
We can get her on the show.
And we are the Philadelphia Eagles, by the way. Just so you know, flag football, Philadelphia Eagles.
This is Leinert's league, and Leinert's dad gave Nick the Eagles team, of course. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah. Shout out Leinert Flag Football League.
Hey, we're going to do one more.
Because
I want to do this one because this one's from Ava Ryan, and she was an early follower on our Instagram page. Shout out to the No Days Off Dad Season IG page. We're building a great community, and I think this is a great one to wrap up on. And you've touched on it, but what does this win mean for the Birds? It will never be the same as the first, obviously, but does it carry the same weight in a new and different sense, or does it mean something else entirely?
You never forget your first Super Bowl win. But you know what? They hit a different tier of a franchise. Yeah. We talked about before the show, and I hope my statistics are correct, but there's only, Miami Dolphins, Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles St. Louis Rams, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now Philadelphia enters that fold as a 2-time Super Bowl winning franchise. So they have upped their tier as a franchise for the future, and as we talked about, they're built to win for a long time right now. Yeah. So this changes a lot of things for the franchise.
I think that's the answer is what it means, and especially the way it happened. Like we hit on Jalen Hurts being 26, Saquon 28, and a host of other young players, and really having the right cap situation across the board to be able to, because so much of the league from a salary cap standpoint is built for parity. So to have all that stuff in place and to win the way you did last night, what this means is we all of a sudden shift the discussion from talking about the Chiefs and possibly three-peating to being like, whoa, as hard as it is to win the NFL, there's no guarantees, but is this team set up to possibly start to be a dynasty in the common era, the current era of the NFL? I think it's a fair question. And we're only asking those questions because of the way it happened last night. So I think that's what it means.
If it was a really close game that came down to a wire and Jake Elliott kicks the walk-off field goal,
yeah, I mean,
you'd say that, but the way they came and played, the way the game went, you're exactly right. I mean, they showed something insane last night.
Held Patrick Mahomes to 11.4 quarterback rating and a 1 quarterback rating in the first half.
And the rating went up because of garbage minutes, where they're just trying to finish the game. Yeah. They don't want to do anything stupid. So there's going to be some touchdowns later. They were just out of it from the beginning.
Yeah, that's what it means.
But that was a fun episode. It's always fun. This isn't typically the normal episode for the No Days Off or by Dad Season podcast, but from time to time we'll do some bonus episodes where we talk ball, because we know moms and dads love talking ball. I love talking ball with Evan. Who knows? Maybe we have something specific planned for the future. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Write comments below. We love to hear what you're saying, and we'll build episodes off it. Have a great day.